On this week's full-time roundup, the North London derby doesn't disappoint. Leipzig humbled Dortmund as Atleti get the best of Bilbao on the races to finish top four. Plus, we end with predictions for UCL and Europa League. Full-time roundup starts right now. And welcome into the latest edition of the full-time roundup. Yes, you hear that correctly. Matt Gessler back in podcast. Matt Gessler back in the co-host chair. Well, the big boy chair, as some would say. Driving here with my friend Daniel Brackett, of course, as always. Daniel, pleasure to see you. I'm in my new location. Last time we were together, we did a live studio recording at a bar because I was not in my new location, but now I'm fully in my apartment. It is great to see you, and looking forward because we've had an absolute worldly of a weekend for some games that we have to get to here.
It really has been, and I won't dox you where you are, but it's a nice view coming across the camera. So definitely happy that you got situated in your new spot. Congratulations on the new apartment in this beautiful city of Charlotte, and excited to kind of get into the football today. And let's go ahead and start here with the North London derby. Probably the biggest Premier League game of the weekend, fair to say. And, I didn't really know what to expect, as Spurs are a really fun side, but very inconsistent. And then Arsenal are, really good at home, but very good at the back. So I didn't know if this would be a really tight, 2-0 game or an absolute thriller. And it was actually the latter.
Yeah, North London derby never seems to disappoint as far as being a thriller, and it felt like early on it was going to kind of have a little bit of lackluster mood to it, especially as Arsenal seemingly came out of the gate and just put the game away. I will say it was definitely more even, and Tottenham definitely got the short end of the stick that made it a little bit lopsided, and then which we'll get into here in a minute, and then second half, Ange Ball just kind of went full bore and really put Arsenal on the back foot, and kind of, if you're an Arsenal fan, you're probably sweating there for those last 5 minutes of stoppage time, as you were only up from 3-0 at halftime to 3-2 with 5 minutes to go, and a full court press, including Vicario coming in on a corner to try and give that extra advantage for Spurs. So either way, Arsenal squeak out the W and stay atop the Premier League and keep pace with City, who we'll get to later as well. But a lot of places to start here, Daniel. Not sure kind of what your main takeaway of the game was, but I still think that Arsenal have some work to do to complete the task, but one step closer in the right direction.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, but the first thing I wanted to just ask you was I just wanted you mentioned over the weekend in a group chat that we're in, how you and a good friend of the show, John Hayes, actually went to a North London derby not too long ago. So can you just share a little bit of the experience of, I know it was in the past here, but just, getting to experience that derby just firsthand?
Yeah, it definitely is an experience in and of its own. We were there 2018 when White Hart Lane had been destroyed and they were building the new Tottenham Stadium, so they were playing at Wembley, which in and of itself was a phenomenal experience just to go and see a game played at Wembley. And then on top of it was North London derby, and we were joking in the group chat. We didn't really quite know the rules, and that in England you can't drink in the game itself, unlike here in the States where it's very very commonplace. They'll even sell you alcohol through vendors within your seat.
Yeah.
And so at halftime, we were all in the concourse as everyone was getting their beverage of choice. And of course we missed the only goal of the game. But even where we sat, we were up high, we were with some friends, and you could feel the energy. It was electric in the stadium. Of course you're looking at a bigger venue than any of those two, the Emirates or Tottenham Stadium, given it's Wembley. But you could just feel the energy and the back and forth, and it was a 1-0 game. Arsenal were definitely in no way, shape, or form where they are now as far as competitiveness, and Spurs at that time were coming off the Maurizio Pochettino era, and we're doing pretty well. And so it was definitely a nice feeling for Johnny in the stands. But it was just a great environment, great atmosphere. Again, it was back and forth, but you could definitely feel the animosity in certain sections, not where we were sitting, but it definitely had that rivalry feel to it, and you could see it, especially in this game. If you saw some of the tweets about fans yelling in the corner at Declan Rice, and just the way that this game is played out, the way it should be a little bit. Obviously there's lines that get crossed here and there, but luckily in England they don't cross it as far as another league that we'll get to later on. But it was a great atmosphere to witness for sure, and something I want to get back to and do differently. Maybe Chelsea this time, with Fulham or Chelsea Spurs or something like that. But all in all, an experience you can never really forget.
I was going to ask if you wore your Chelsea kit for it. But
I did not. We went to
probably a smart decision.
Yeah, probably. We went to Stamford Bridge the next day. But no, I didn't get to get beat up in a match doing that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing, because I thought that was a really cool story. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about it, especially our listeners get to listen in, especially those who are listening in the United States here. But really the biggest takeaway I came across, and I had to agree with you, I thought Spurs actually outplayed Arsenal in most facets of the game other than a dead ball. And, that's where Arsenal capitalized. They've scored a ton of corners and free kicks this year, and it didn't stop them with two in this game. And I was actually speaking with a Spurs fan of mine, Max Umansky, who's actually been on the pod a couple times now, and he was really just talking about how Ange Postecoglou, one of his biggest cons or negatives about him, which there isn't many, is his refusal to hire set piece coaches. It was highlighted at Celtic before he came over, and it's showed all season long that they cannot defend free kicks. Vicario struggles as well, and I feel like if you just do the coaching of live play, but have a dead ball specialist coach for throw-ins like Jurgen Klopp is employed, and set pieces, a lot of these issues that they've had would kind of go away. And when you're challenging for a top four or a title or any sort of trophy, it's the fine margins that kind of get you over the finish line. And set pieces is one of the biggest things, and more goals have started happening from set pieces as specialist coaches have come into the Premier League and around the world as well. So that's one of the biggest takeaways I got is Spurs basically just shot themselves in the foot by not identifying that as a big weakness. And you'd hope at least in the summer that they kind of figure out a solution for that.
Yeah, you kept seeing Ben White just kind of box in Vicario every time on a corner, or even a more direct set piece. We've seen that all season with him too. So I want to your point, yes, there's an element of that being taught by a specific dedicated coach, but at the same time, there's also a little bit of just kind of owning your role and responsibility on a set piece, right? Knowing who to mark up and how to kind of get away from some of that pressure. We've seen it with Chelsea. We've seen it with other, Palace in the past, where people just don't mark man up and guys get open. And so a little bit of that responsibility goes on the player. And to your point though, yes, there's specialty coaches in every sport for every position. It feels like these days, and the more time you dedicate, especially with how talented some of these individuals are, you put that much focus on it. And ideally that's what it should be, right? It's a special play that you get to do something to give yourself an advantage. That's why you have it. And so why not take advantage of that and utilize all the skill and talent that you have and come up with some really unique opportunities and some unique plays. We've seen Manchester City come up with some interesting ones here lately. Of course, some that just happened to maybe be more of a goalie blunder in the Champions League with Bernardo Silva going for it from 30 yards out, but he clearly saw something there. So there's opportunities all around. Going back to the game specifically, I think Arsenal were definitely, once they got that early goal, they definitely sat back a little bit, and they expected Tottenham to come full Ange style press, and you saw that, and they definitely got away with it, right? Because had Mickey Van de Ven's goal been allowed and not offside, which was minuscule offside, but offside nonetheless, the game completely changes. That's one instance. Then, of course, the big incident is the Kulusevski non-penalty that then instantly turns downfield, and Bukayo Saka scores that second. And now it's a totally different game, right? So Arsenal were able to really sit in that block. They get that third goal off a set piece. But to your point, I think where they got outplayed was in the second half, where they really sat in that low block, and they took off the pressure of being in a North London derby. And when Spurs got that first goal, they were on the front foot. You could feel it. The stadium changed, the environment changed, the players were making more runs in between the lines, and Arsenal honestly just couldn't keep up. And no discredit to them. That was just, you're up 3-0. You don't expect that to happen. But they sat so low and they sat so deep that once it became 3-2, it almost felt like Arsenal were going to escape. If that game had been 10 minutes longer, I think that's a 3-3 draw. And that's testament to how Spurs came out of the block, and the fans and getting behind them, and the players coming on. And again, Arteta kind of squeaks by. But that's what you need to do if champions win games like this. And this is a big result against arguably their hardest opponent for the rest of the season.
Yeah. And you knew that, especially Ange being the coach he is, he was just going to throw everything at Arsenal in the second half. And I think Arteta knew that and was, basically just like, all right, come beat us with our, fantastic back line. And to give Spurs credit, they did. The changes that Ange made worked. And it was an absolute treat, because at halftime with Spurs being down 3-0, I just was scratching my head how this game had went this way. But, North London derby never disappoints, and I'm excited for the next one. And I'm really excited for Ange Ball Part 2 next season, because I want to see how it evolves from this season. I feel like we have a very rough picture of what it could look like, but, give Ange another transfer window, cut the dead weight, and really build something here. And I'm really excited. And if I'm a Spurs fan, I definitely would be really optimistic for not only, the rest of the season, but next year in particular, as they have a pretty tough schedule, unlike Arsenal. But I did want to get to the champions, or, the champion contenders here with Manchester City. They did win against Forest, a 2-0 win. This was always going to happen. It wasn't a very entertaining game. Forest actually, just played that counterattack football and try to break, and they just didn't have that final product. So, I feel like most people would have thought, Manchester City would have won that game fairly comfortably. 2-0 is fairly comfortable, but more ho-hum.
Yeah, this game definitely was more difficult than the scoreline says. Of course, Erling Haaland comes on as a second half sub and gets that second, which essentially put this game away. But Chris Wood had a few opportunities early in this game to make it really interesting in the first half in particular. And then, like you mentioned, just missed opportunities, and then some really interesting decisions by Nuno to leave players on when they were injured. You saw some of the kind of the delay in the substitutions, a couple players basically hobbling up the field, then had to go on their own down and basically force a sub. And it really kind of changed the game there, where, look, City have such depth at every position that at this point in the season, that's what's going to happen. You're going to see players get, little nicks and knocks and have to come off, but you can bring the likes of Erling Haaland off the bench when, Julian Alvarez gets a little tired versus, whoever Nottingham Forest can bring on for, Smith White or not Smith White, Gibbs White, or, or Bowley at the back. That's just the difference, right? And so that's just where they are, and that's what they're going to do. And that they continue to steamroll and chug along like we expected them to. Of course, a little blip in the Champions League. They get a nice bounce back performance in W against Chelsea, although a little bit lackluster there. Then they put up 4 against Brighton in a beautiful way of playing. And what can you say? They have a game in hand. And if you're Arsenal, all you can really do is just continue to keep winning and hope someone comes along, maybe Spurs, where they have a lot of difficult time going to Tottenham Stadium and scoring goals. Maybe if you're an Arsenal fan, you might be actually a Spurs fan in a couple weeks' time. Hard to imagine that they would admit that, but that's really the only way I can see City, kind of dropping enough points here to give Arsenal that title. And it just goes down to what they can do offensively and who they can bring on. Again, no Phil Foden as well in this game, and just what nice riches to have if you're Manchester City and Pep Guardiola.
No doubt, no doubt. And you kind of touched on it, and the commentator was going ballistic in terms of when City's, Nico Williams conceded the corner, pulled his hamstring. It was very obvious, and then kind of hobbled off, and they took a corner down a man. Last time I checked, you can't sub on a corner anyways, or can you? So I guess they could have probably subbed on the corner, but there wasn't enough time, I felt like, to get Montiel on. And the commentator was basically blaming that on Nuno. I don't know if I felt that way. I get it. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts. Like, I get like later in when there was injuries, but you can see the corner, the medics treat the guy. I don't know. Like, he has to go warm up. It's like 30 minutes into the match. Like, I wouldn't expect the sub to be ready within 30 seconds. Like, am I wrong in my thinking?
I mean, here's the deal. We see this all the time. Players not ready on the sideline, right? And yes, there's moments when you probably don't expect to come in the game if you're a bench player, but you should always be ready, no matter what. You never know what's going to happen in a game, and you don't ideally want to sub on a corner. You don't want to sub on a free kick, just because, man marking and in the flow of the game and things like that. Like you mentioned, you can sub on a corner. It's not sports link. In professional soccer, you can do that. But it's a weird one, because I would prefer to, especially given how good City are, even at full strength, to give them an opportunity to play essentially with a man up on a set piece, as we just alluded to how important set pieces are. You almost take that opportunity to however you need it. He goes down, we've seen it all weekend where keepers go down or somebody goes down and they delay the game, and you just get that guy ready, because again, playing one arm behind your back against Manchester City alone is not going to be helpful. And did it change the outcome of the corner? Maybe not. But
Yeah,
if you're asking me, the player should be ready to come on. That's just how you've always been taught. Be ready. Don't go get your jersey when your name's called. Have your shin guards in your hand and your boots tied, ready to go whenever the manager calls you. And then additionally, defend that set piece better. And ultimately it didn't change the outcome of the game. They were already down 1-0, but it's just an interesting storyline for the game.
no doubt. And thanks for kind of going over that. And you mentioned that they're challenging. I'll tell you who's not challenging for the Premier League title anymore. That's Liverpool, as they drop points again against West Ham at West Ham. I don't even know. Jared Bowen opens up the scoring. Robertson has almost an immediate answer. And Liverpool score consecutive goals, and they're in the pole position to get 3 points here and maybe make this 3-leg title race a little interesting. And Mikel Antonio in the 77th minute says, no, thank you. I'm going to tie this game up. And that's kind of just been, Liverpool for the longest time has just conceded the first goal, and they've been able to see games out after coming back, and it's starting to catch up with them, and they're completely running out of steam. Jurgen, benched a couple guys today, including Mo Salah, Harvey Elliott, Gakpo started, Gravenberch started, Kwanzaa started, and so that was a little interesting. And then, later on in the game, Mikel Antonio scores, and you see Jurgen and Mohamed Salah arguing on the touchline, which is a really bad look. And every once in a while, you'll see Mohamed Salah get a little pissy on the field. He does not like being substituted. He definitely doesn't like being subbed on in the 78th minute. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, and if you thought that was unacceptable or understandable, or kind of, where you're at in this point, because I'm pretty conflicted here.
So we'll take it in two ways. One, we'll take the overall performance of where Liverpool are. We'll get to the Salah part at the end. So they do correspond, but that first half was honestly one of the most disappointing performances I've seen from Liverpool all season. And I don't really have any, say in the fight here. That this is your team, and that was flat. That was disappointing. That was unacceptable. You definitely know that Jurgen Klopp in the locker room absolutely ripped into them. They came out much better in the second half, but you mentioned giving up that early goal. 16 times this season that's almost half the games that they've played. They've given up an early goal. And to your point, it does catch up with you. And they have the firepower to do it when they're fully in form, when they're fully fit, but that's not where they are right now. And Mo Salah is a prime example of that. He has not been in form for a few months now, whatever is going on, whether that, the injury is actually more severe than we were told from African Cup of Nations, whether he, was a little bit annoyed with Jurgen for maybe keeping him around versus letting him go to Saudi, which is, and then saying, oh, I'm going to be here, come stay with the project, and then leaving. That's all speculation, both pieces. But a player of his quality should know that he's not in form. Right. He understands that he is not playing at Mo Salah level right now. And so it is the right and the duty of the manager to play the best players on the pitch. And Mo Salah is not one of the best 11 players on Liverpool at the moment. So I have absolutely no problem with him coming off the bench. You have every right to prove yourself. The player of his quality, yes, you need a goal, you need a moment, you're going to bring him on because you never know what he's going to give you. But Jurgen Klopp sees him every day in practice and training and knows what's going on. And so for Mo Salah to get upset, and clearly Jurgen has had some issues with Mo of late. This is not just a one-off incident that happened on the touchline. This has been back and forth behind the scenes for a little bit of time now. And Jurgen may have made a comment, hey, give me everything you got. Maybe it was in jest. Maybe it was a little bit more than Mo Salah expected. And he fires back. And again, if the team is in good form, good shape, everyone's moving towards the right mission, this isn't even an issue. And clearly you're seeing some fractures coming between the locker room. And again, part of that is probably the recent play on the field. And it's disappointing to see because you would have liked to have seen Jurgen Klopp go out in a really good way and have the team perform for him. And they just really haven't the last couple of weeks, which is disappointing to see.
Yeah. I mean, there's a time and place for everything. And, on live television right after a goal when the camera is on you to do that. And then after when you're asked about it, Mo Salah is supposed to be, a leader. He's one of the top three, I think, of like the captains or maybe four. So he's worn the armband before and he's just setting a terrible example for the younger players that are in the squad. And, it was even worse after when he was asked, he just was a dick about it in a way. And I just don't really care for it. I agree that he hasn't been at his best, especially for the standard that we've kind of laid out for how he should be the last 7 seasons. But he's also been shifting into not the out and out goal scorer, but more of a creator type. And it is a little frustrating to watch because he's not as good as a creator as running in behind and, putting the ball in the back of the net. But, he did have a really good opportunity that he put on a platter, which I've seen more times than I can count. And it fell at the feet of Darwin Nunez. And Darwin just smashes it right into the keeper. And he's also a player that, I'm getting fairly, my patience is waning with Darwin. And I was a big Darwin proponent or supporter at the start because I love the chaos. But you got to put the ball in the back of the net. And he just hasn't been doing that at all. He's been just missing it quite a bit and really big games for us too. And he just hasn't stepped up. And I think he still has a future. I think he'll be okay at the end of the day, but big Liverpool supporter and just completely watching the air come out of the balloon all at once in the last month has been humbling. It's been surprising. And I think there's 6 fixtures in a row that have been just dismal. And I don't think the season could end any faster than it's currently doing because it's getting kind of hard to watch, to be honest. But this is not a Liverpool podcast. This is a
Thank God.
European podcast. So we're going to go ahead and move on to your team as Villa and Chelsea draw here in a shock draw. For me, it was a shock. 2-2. Villa go up 2-0, and it's looking like it's going to be another 4 or 5 burger on Chelsea's head. And credit to you guys. You guys showed some character and were able to bounce back in the second half.
Yeah, this is not a Liverpool podcast, but it is a Chelsea podcast, so that's totally fine. We'll just no. But I've said it all season. This team is still growing, and you saw that in moments. There's different areas that you're going to see it throughout the season. I thought the way that they took a really difficult situation at Arsenal, where they could have had the similar performance here. They put their bootstraps up and they kind of went back to work and they found a way to get a result. Could have been really, a learning moment, and it was, and they took advantage of that. For me, that's encouraging. What's discouraging is the way that we started. Poor defensively in the back, basically handed that first goal. I know it goes off Cucurella, but it was inevitable. If it wasn't that moment, it was going to happen. Additionally, Madueke doesn't come back and doesn't track his defender or his winger, and gets that ball across. And then the second goal, you can't really say much. It goes between the legs, and I know you're very high on Jordan Rodgers and what he's been able to do since coming over. Morgan Rodgers been coming over from Middlesbrough, but I think, like I said, ultimately what comes down to this for me was that it was just a good performance. Not great, but this team is definitely growing. And again, every player on this squad, for the exception of Thiago Silva, is under 28 essentially. And so these players are still learning. They're starting to be professionals. That takes time. Sometimes you have a mix of seasoned veterans to kind of help them kind of get over that bridge. And we don't have that as a squad right now. So I would say that this team is kind of where you expect them to be. I know frustration, especially in my voice, has come through across many a time this season, but this team
Really?
is, if I'm looking at it holistically and where they should be, that's where they are. And I do think you'll see an entirely different side next year after a full off season, a debrief of how the season went, some opportunities to grow and learn and understand how to finish games off when they're winning a game, or how to kind of find moments and find 10, 15 minutes to kind of calm a game down if things are not going their way. And this was one of those opportunities. And they, like I said, they could have had the same exact type of situation with Arsenal where they gave up the second and they go all the way down to 6 or 5 or whatever. And they didn't do that this time around, which is a good, encouraging sign. So again, not much to say. I mean, we'll probably finish, 8th, 7th, maybe if we're lucky. So that's not great, but the signs are there. And I think Poch has an opportunity. He probably gets until winter break of next season. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And hopefully by then we're having a different conversation, but he's going to have some time here. The way that this team is proving and showing the heart. Also injuries, 13 players out going into this one. So really young bench as well. And so, yeah, there's a lot of upside, but it's been painful for sure, but the light is almost there at the end of the tunnel, and only a few more games left to go. And a couple of good ones that we can ruin some seasons with still if things go well. So we'll see.
No Enzo, no Nkuku, no Reece James,
no Chilwell.
Chilwell. 3 of your best players probably I just named. So, and 2 of those haven't even been a factor all season. So definitely tough, but I did hear you walk back your top 6 take here, which was nice to see, as I've been busting your balls for probably
still an outside shot. Still an outside shot.
He still believes. He still believes. But last game in the Premier League I wanted to get to was United drawing Burnley. It was close against Sheffield couple days ago when they did play Sheffield, and they were able to get the ball in the back of the net to win that game. And then they play Burnley back to back, and they actually drew this one. Couldn't put the ball in the back of the net this time. Just pretty unacceptable performance, especially at Old Trafford. Game just lacked so much quality in the final third. Everything was great until, that final pass, and both teams just didn't have it. United actually went up first, and they gave Burnley an absolute lifeline by conceding a penalty. And, I was thinking that maybe, someone would pop up at the end of the day to put the ball in the back of the net for United. But alas, Ten Hag subs made sure that didn't happen by keeping on Anthony. He subbed Hoyland, I believe. He subbed a couple other stars as well. Garnacho went off early. So where's your head at with Ten Hag? Is he just on borrowed time? Is he gone? Is it already... It's not official, but is it, it seems like the season's dead, or kind of where are you at with Manchester United?
He's dead man walking, I would say. Credit to Anthony, who played well. I've been critical of him all season. He actually looked pretty good in this performance. Not saying much considering it's Burnley, but he did look good. He got a nice goal, probably could have had another opportunity and a potential handball late that I think Erik ten Hag lost his mind over. Although you've seen that called, you've seen that not called. So what's a handball? Who knows? I mean, look, the guy is a little delusional. To be honest, I get the positivity and trying to be rah and find the good in everything. We all could probably use a little bit of that in our lives, me especially as well. But to say that you were one of the best teams in creating moments right now in the Premier League and of late is pretty remarkable when you barely beat Coventry and you tied Burnley. Sure, I guess that makes you one of the most, dominant teams in the Premier League right now, the way you're playing. So,
maybe the championship. Maybe
yeah, exactly. Maybe the championship. Who knows? I mean, the problem for him is that he's just lost all credibility with the players, and that happened a while ago, right? Where you're again, you want to put things in positive light, but players are not dumb. They see what's happening on the pitch. They understand. They're in training. They probably are seeing or hearing things that he's telling them to do and scratching their heads there too. And so ultimately, United are probably going to finish in Europa League spot in 6th. Maybe Newcastle catches them in 7th, just given the way that they've been playing. But Erik ten Hag's on the way out, and now it's just a matter of what Ineos wants to do and how they build this team. They have good pieces, Kobe Minu, Garnacho,
Højlund.
You can even, Højlund. Anthony's young. Okay, we'll see what happens if he can keep up in the Premier League.
Sancho's on loan.
Sancho could come back with a new manager. Those pieces in the back, the French center back, he's a young player, 18 years old, that has come in. There are pieces here. So we'll see what happens, but they're not happening with Erik ten Hag, and he's definitely just kind of biding his time no matter what he says. If it's not official, it'll be official in about 4 weeks.
Yeah, you can be a great tactician or you could be a great man manager, and I feel like he's neither of those. You got to be one or the other.
You got to be one or the other.
Yeah. Ideally, you could be both, like a Pep Guardiola.
Well, that's a unicorn, but yeah, at least one of the two. At least one
exactly.
of the two.
And it seems like he's been failing at both. So I feel like his time is definitely done. Just a quick, storyline. Everton are safe, so that's interesting. It's really going to be up to see if Forest or Luton are going to, take that 18th spot here. But we'll go on and move to the Bundesliga, as we talked a lot about the Premier League this week. Bayer. I mean, I feel like this is the headline of every single German Bundesliga week here. Somehow they just stay alive. They keep the streak alive. They're down 2-0 to Stuttgart. Stuttgart played a fantastic game plan against them, and they just always have an answer. And I think it was a 95th minute winner this time to tie it up. And I've just kind of run out of superlatives, adjectives, you name it, on what to call this Bayer team.
Yeah, what was it? Everyone keeps saying Fergie time back in the day, and now it's Xavi time. The way that they continue to score goals, I think it's something like 10 plus goals in the 90th minute this season for them,
insane.
Which is absurd. And so this is just the bigger picture here, right? And there's two ways to look at this. One, if you're Stuttgart, you absolutely needed this win to keep pace with Bayern Munich, who get the W as well, and get a little bit of distance at 5 points clear for second place. That's really all you're playing for if you're Stuttgart, but you're a little disappointed that you didn't get the W. If you're Bayer Leverkusen, you're playing for history, right? And I think that's a little bit of what's going on here, is that they don't quit. And when you see a team like this and you don't quit and you have an opportunity to not only go undefeated in Bundesliga, which this was probably their hardest game, and they may do it, but they're also looking at potentially going undefeated in the entire campaign. So, I mean, for me, if I'm going to push everything I have on the line, if it goes in, it goes in. I've said this to you all season, that it almost feels like a team of destiny of some kind. And so now it's proving that point where they've won the title. They could have given up, the last couple of games. They could have just squandered it and waited for Europa League, which they have a big game against Roma on Thursday this week. And then they could have just waited till the Pokal final in May. But this team is on a mission, and that's credit to the manager who's gotten them up and going every single week. And they're buying in, Daniel. They believe that they can be a team that go undefeated in the Bundesliga. And then from there, who knows, they can go undefeated all the way through, which would be maybe arguably the greatest team of all time.
I mean, it's a bold take. It's a bold take. I'm going to have to digest that, but
I mean, you don't lose a game all season in any competition. That's
yeah. I mean, season's not over, so we'll see. But
we'll see. But
I mean, if you're asking me to play devil's advocate here, which I will do, which I don't like doing, but I will maybe, not leave it so late, every single game it feels like. I mean, at some point it will catch up to them. Hopefully it's not in a final because I would love them to go and win the treble, win the Europa League, win the Polkai, and then, have a treble and an undefeated season would be just nuts. And especially this team was in, I think, 16th when Xabi took over. And that was a year and a half ago. So within, 400 and so days, they went from like one of the worst teams in the Bundesliga to the best, maybe of all time, definitely in the Bundesliga for sure. It's just so wild. So hopefully they did rest Florian this game. So obviously he's going to be playing the big part in all their future games to keep that unbeaten streak alive. And it's going to be a really fun end of the season. And I'm really pulling for the treble here. But Leipzig crush Dortmund to leapfrog them in fourth place. Dortmund, do have, this could have been a look ahead game as they do have PSG tomorrow on Tuesday. But still they needed that fourth spot, and now they're a good 5 points behind Leipzig. And I mean, they're going to have to go all the way to get Champions League ball, it's seeming like.
Yeah. I mean, but you never put it past them, right? This is kind of one of those performances. You don't know what to expect. They could come out against PSG now and play one of the best games of the season. And they just did not look good in this game. I mean, Jadon Sancho scores a nice early goal. And then from there on in, it was just the Xavi Simons and Luis Openda show. They absolutely dominate this game, and 4-1 is the final. It feels like this is the final nail in the coffin for them in the league. Of course, now 5 points behind Leipzig. And again, we've talked about all season, Daniel, there's just inconsistency with this team, and we're flip a coin, it's almost like, two-face, which team is showing up. So it's unfortunate because the talent that they have there is one of the best in Europe, certainly one of the best in the Bundesliga. And they kind of underdelivered this season. Again, the hangover from last season maybe is part of that, but ultimately that's not acceptable at this point of the season. And to go into arguably your most important game, right now, where you are on the table, knowing that you had to win this game to keep pace, and you put out a stinking performance like that, if you're Edin Terzic, you got to be scratching your head a little bit. And talk about someone that we've talked about on the way out too. It feels like he's kind of, he does something miraculous in Champions League. Well, that's
just signed an extension, or he's going to apparently.
Then we'll see Borussia Dortmund in the same place next year. But
exactly,
it's an inconsistent team, and that's the problem.
Yeah, no, I couldn't believe they did that. You got to wait to the end of the season to make those decisions, anyways. And I'm still, he could probably finish second in the Bundesliga, and I still wouldn't want to see a long-term future. As I'm not a Dortmund fan, but if I was, I'd probably feel that way. But we're gonna see if they'll respond, and I feel like a lot of these bad performances, they do have a good response. So maybe PSG has a little surprise waiting for them at Signal Iduna Park on Tuesday, but we'll have to see, and we'll definitely be talking about it on Tuesday here. But realistically, where do you think Openda could go in the summer? Because he is a phenomenal player, and I don't think he's going to be him or Sesko are going to be out, and Xavi Simons is out as well probably. So where do you think he goes if he was to leave?
Well, Xavi's going to go back to PSG. I think they'll take that loan deal back. Openda, though, is a good option. I mean, there's a lot of teams that could use a forward like him, especially next season. I mean, call me crazy, he would be a great fit at Liverpool.
I agree. I was hoping you would say that.
I think up front he would do really well and give you guys a little different pace, and have Luis Diaz on the left with him in the middle, and then find a player on the right-hand side. You can move Gakpo to that right-hand side a little bit, kind of see what he's got there. And then you have Szoboszlai and McAllister in the middle. That's a really nice front five. Otherwise, there's probably going to be some Italian team that may come into the mix. But if you're talking about Premier League side, Liverpool is probably my best bet. I think Chelsea's not going to really do much in the summer from a striker position, just because they want to see what happens with Nkunku next year. Maybe they save and try and move some pieces out versus bring pieces in. So yeah, I mean, Arsenal could use a striker, an out and out striker. So he could be a good fit there too. But he's a really young talent, and he's had a phenomenal season. So I do think he's going to leave. Of course, he's not going to go to Bayern with Harry Kane there. So, I mean, he could go to Bayer Leverkusen if Boniface gets moved on too. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, no, I feel like, no offense to Italy, but I think going to the Italian league would be almost like a lateral step. Like, I feel like he wants to take a horizontal step and take that next step. And I feel like the Premier League is calling his name. Unfortunately, Real Madrid or Barcelona probably won't be in the market for that type of player. So I don't think he'll go to Spain. But you never know. So I do see the comp with the Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. I guess Arne Slot will be the guy in charge next year. So we'll see kind of what happens there. But I did want to just pose that question because him or Benjamin Sesko will be gone. I just don't know which one. But, I'd probably sell the more prolific one, and that would be Openda. But to get to La Liga here, probably the biggest game of the weekend was Atletico Madrid beating Athletic Bilbao here handily. This was another, race for top four, kind of like the Leipzig Dortmund game. And Atleti never count out Diego Simeone because he gets the best out of Ernesto Valverde and the Bilbao men. And was this result pretty surprising for you? It was at the Metropolitano, but I expected Athletic Bilbao to give up more of a fight.
So I'm gonna defer on this game because obviously the incident that happened in the stadium to me takes precedent over what happened on the pitch.
I didn't even see what happened.
So another incident of racial abuse towards Nico Williams on the pitch.
Oh, really?
And I'm not going to give Atleti the time of day for that. Honestly, I think they don't deserve it. That's my take on it. They won the game. Great. Congratulations. But enough is enough. It's the same exact stand that has given Vinicius Jr. an issue all season and last season as well. And so I'm just going to sit here and let you, if you'd like to talk about it, we're happy to. The rest of the game, I'll pass it off to you, but I'm not going to give them the time of day that they deserve because what's going on in that stadium week in, week out is unacceptable. And it's time for La Liga to step in. It's time for FIFA to step in. This is 2024. And the fact that we still have racial issues at the same exact stadium with the same supporters is totally unacceptable. And the more that people give credit to Atleti and promote them and praise them and talk about them, that just amplifies and gives these people more firepower to talk about it. If it's up to me, I would give them deduction of points. I would close the stand. It's enough is enough. And that's just how I feel about it. Now, again, on the game was what it was and a big result for the table. But to me, the game is meaningless in this instance, given what happened in the stadium.
That's fair. I actually missed that. So did not see that, was not aware. I'm not going to comment on the game, I guess, anymore. I'm just going to comment that Atleti are now 6 points ahead of Athletic Club, and they are 7 points behind Girona here, who do win yet again. And this game was a little wild, Matt, because not only did Girona miss a penalty in the first 25 minutes of the game, but so did their rivals. I don't think I've ever seen two missed penalties together. I don't think I've ever seen it in the first 25 minutes against Las Palmas. And then Artem Dubovnik with the third penalty of the night actually scores and nets this one. And they've hung around this entire year. They're only 2 points from Barcelona now. And I feel like we just have not given them the credit they deserve because we thought, they're going to run out of gas. They did run out of gas at one point, but they kind of make a comeback and are finishing the season strong.
Yeah, huge credit to them. I will admit, and I've said it on the show, I did not think that they would have enough steam to get across the finish line in top four. They've proven me wrong, no doubt about it. Per usual, if I say something, usually the opposite happens. So probably a benefit for them that I made that comment. You mentioned 2 points behind Barcelona, who get a big W today on Monday as we're recording this, and kind of leapfrog them again. But it's a great story. It'll be interesting to see if Barcelona can keep up and keep ahead of them. It would be financially a big deal, just as the prize money is allocated. It would be a big deal for Girona too. Obviously that dollar goes a long way. Of course, they have the City Football Group power behind them, so a little bit different instance. But it's a great story, and yeah, like you said, crazy game. But I'm happy to see them get the performance and get the W. I never wanted to see them go down. Not down as far as down, but out of the top four. Just looking at it on paper, I just didn't think they had enough in the wheelhouse to do it. But credit to them, they found a way, and this team is for real. And hopefully they can build on this going forward. Of course, they're not going to catch Real Madrid. Nobody is, who again beat Real Sociedad on Friday and get a little further ahead. Given the El Clasico result, basically the league title is wrapped up. But you're looking at a Girona team that's kind of setting themselves up for the future, which is great to see. And another team to kind of add to that battle of Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid in the future would be great for the league and great for the exposure across Europe. So credit to them. It will be interesting to see what happens. I don't know if there are any implications of them going into Champions League with Manchester City. Did they change it? Okay, so then they'll be fine. But it'll be interesting to see how they do. We talked about it this season with some Premier League teams having their first instance with European football. It'll be interesting to see how this squad, definitely less resourced, and definitely not as deep as a Newcastle or West Ham or others do with European football midweek next season. So credit to them, though. It's a great story.
Yeah, they're losing Savio as well, probably their best player of the season. So, do they lean on the City Football Group to build out more of a depth, I guess a deeper squad? Is definitely a good question to keep an eye on in the offseason to see how they kind of reload and see if they can go and challenge for top four again. I don't think they'll be able to, but we've been wrong every step of the way with this team, so you never know. But
yeah.
You mentioned
and keeping Michel is a big deal too. Yeah, not having him go to Barcelona will be big too. So.
Well, speaking of Barcelona, Xavi has announced he's going to stay, and so he's completely turned on his decision. A lot of different thoughts when it comes to Xavi and Barcelona. Barcelona have treated Xavi terribly, but then Xavi seems to kind of feel certain ways at different points of the season, depending on how they're playing. If they're playing bad, then it's, I'm not staying. But if they're playing great, it's like, maybe I'll think about it, which is kind of annoying, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I'm glad he's staying. And this game was nuts. I mean, for a Monday afternoon game for me, we saw not one, but two of the worst goalkeeping errors I've ever seen. There was even, you could argue, the game winner was a goalkeeper error as well. It all started with Ter Stegen pulling a Neuer and trying to scoop it over the striker as he received the ball. Completely messed it up. The defender just rolls it into the back of the net. And then you have on the other side, right before halftime, Lamine Yamal, or someone passed it back to their keeper. It takes one of the worst touches I've ever seen. And Lamine Yamal is on it, handballs it, straight red card. And so, I think Barcelona were down 2-1 at half. They tied it up almost immediately. Lewandowski netted a hat-trick after he announced this season that he was staying for one more season, probably because Xavi announced he was staying as well. And they ended up winning 4-2. Like you mentioned, leapfrogging Girona. And Barcelona, the roller coaster just keeps continuing. But the kids are the ones kind of lifting this team up. And that's why I'm glad Xavi's going to stay, is because the amount of academy kids he's entrusted and has given just a significant amount of minutes. It's just super impressive. And I love to see La Masia cook.
I mean, they need it. It's not really an option for them given everything that's going on financially. So it's good to see. And yes, they've, of course, it's Barcelona. They've had the best talent historically at that young, youthful position. And we're seeing it right now. Arguably, Daniel, one of the best talents, generational talent right now, with Lamine Yamal and just the way that he's performed, not only in La Liga, Champions League when they were in it, just what he's done is just phenomenal. And you mentioned Xavi. We can spend a lot more time on this, and not to say I'm surprised that he's coming back. I think he's always wanted to be a Barcelona manager. He's a legend of Barcelona. He's always said, I want to be part of that family. And yes, they didn't really give him the time of day. But I think they also saw that the writing was on the wall. They couldn't really get anybody else. No disrespect to Rafa Marquez, but he's not going to be the future either. And so they said, okay, let's keep what we have. And of course, you look at it too, and they won the league last season. So, it's kind of, what have you done for me lately? As we know, in football is always the case, but I'm happy he turned around. Now, the big question for me is going to be what happens next season if they don't do well again, and will he walk out the door and kind of make the same stink and kind of pout his feet and get what he needs? So, that's just to me an interesting one. When things went tough this year, his first thought was to walk away. That to me is a little concerning if I'm a Barcelona fan, but they really had no choice. And Xavi, being the legend that he is, he didn't really have much of a choice either. So I think it's a good fit for everybody. And we'll see, just how much this stepping stone will take for these youngsters next year, especially when everyone is healthy and back.
Absolutely. We are running late, so we'll quickly touch on the biggest storyline within the Italian league. Roma draw against Napoli late. They are now 4 points from Bologna after suffering a fairly big loss against Bologna last week in the midweek fixture. But this was a big game, as Tammy Abraham just came back from a long-term injury. He's able to get his first goal of the season, the game tying goal. I was really just interested in to see how De Rossi, would set up and who he'd play, as they do have that big game next Thursday against Bayer Leverkusen. But I thought I thought Napoli were the better team, to be honest. And I mean, the game was weird. It was very cagey for the first 55 minutes of the game. And once the first goal went in, I think it was around the 56th minute, the game just completely opened up. I mean, we saw Renato Sanchez give away one of the worst penalties I've ever seen against Kvaratskhelia, Osimhen netting that to make it interesting. And we kind of saw a little bit of everything in this game, but nothing like a classic Italian fixture to really get the Sunday scaries on the afternoon to go away.
And good for Tammy Abraham. I was actually just talking with a friend of mine asking where he was. And so it's good to see him back. And after a very long injury, get the last game of the season last year, no less too. And so he came back and get that goal, which is great. And just for, the local folk here in Charlotte, the bigger storyline as well as Hells Verona is still outside of the drop zone. So Karol Swiderski will probably not be back here in the Queen City. That has been floating around as people are begging for that to happen. Good luck with that. Move on. Time to go on to the next story. But yeah, this was not much of a game and not much of a kind of just a, like we say, typical nap game. And that's kind of what this felt like. Even though there were some moments, this is the exact reason why I kind of make the joke week in, week out with Italy.
Yeah, I mean, I very, very rarely take naps. And I woke up in the 55th minute when the first goal was scored and was able to watch all the goals happen late. But I did, the nice Italian commentating voice did put me to sleep for a good hour or so. And I was very thankful for that nap. So that was the true definition of a nap game. But real quick, PSG with their draw clinched the lead in Ligue 1. Boring. But
Shocker.
on the flip hand, Brest and Rennes have one of the most wild score lines I've seen at 5-4. I think Brest had the better hand. They were down, I think, at multiple points in this game and then completely answered back. Both teams just would not give up. And Brest, is still in the top 3 of Ligue 1, I believe, which is extremely impressive. Just if you look at, what the club has done historically. So I wanted to mention that. I always like talking Portuguese ball, so I'm going to talk about it right now. Lisbon draw with Porto late to make the title race interesting. Gyökeres netted the 2 goals in the 87th and the 88th minute to, put him at 40 goals for the season. He will be probably in an Arsenal shirt by, the end of June, but, who knows? And Benfica actually came back from a losing position to win against Braga to make this title race between Lisbon and Benfica fairly interesting. And then last but not least, PSV. Serginho Dest got hurt. They all wore number 8 jerseys pre-match to support him, as he's going to probably miss Copa America as well as the rest of the season. And then they went up and they beat the team 8-0. So what a storyline script there.
To be fair, they could have probably put 100 on this team. They are by far the best team in Eredivisie. But yeah, it's unfortunate, of course, for Serginho. And, I have my feelings on whether he should have been part of that roster anyway, but you never want to see it cut short due to injury and wish him well in his recovery. But PSV was never going to be in doubt. It was just a matter of how many they wanted to put up, and nice tribute if that's the target they were going for sure. But Daniel, we have midweek games, and they are some big ones. We are down to the business of European championships. We have Europa League on Thursday, and we have, of course, the Champions League on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, PSG and PSV kick us off on Wednesday. We have Bayern Munich and Madrid on Tuesday. Give me your prediction for both of these two games. We'll go in an order. So give me Madrid, Bayern on Tuesday, and then PSG, Dortmund on Wednesday.
Oh gosh, I was hoping to get the easier one done. I'm thinking 1-1 Bayern Madrid, and I'm thinking 3-1 PSG against Dortmund. I think PSG I think Mbappe is gonna put on an absolute show, and Dortmund's luck is gonna kind of run out, even though they're at home. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-1 Madrid over Bayern Munich on Tuesday. And then, I do think that PSG are just a different class for Dortmund. It's just one of those things where at the end of the day, your true colors come out, especially at this level of the competition. Maybe not 3-1, maybe 2-1, but that's enough, especially on the road in front of the yellow wall. If you can take care of business on the road to get a W, then bring things back to the Parc des Princes on the second leg. I think that's too much to ask for Dortmund. So I'll go 2-1 in that one, and I'll go 2-1 in the other game as well. Now, Europa League, Daniel, we mentioned Bayer Leverkusen going for the undefeated streak. They have a big rematch from the semifinal last year with Roma. Of course, Jose Mourinho was at the helm, and things got a little ugly last year in that one. So how do you think this plays out? Does Bayer go for blood early? Do they kind of just play with their meat a little bit? What's your thought here?
Play with your meat? What kind of talk was that? I'm gonna say Bayer just the better team. Bayer had the better coach. Bayer have destiny to fulfill. I think they're going to win this game 2-1. And then
I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you on that one. And by the way, it's play with your food, not with your meat. So apologies for that reference.
Thank you.
Yeah, 2-1 Bayer over Roma there, and then like you said, team of destiny. A really interesting matchup here. Marseille versus Atalanta. Any thoughts on this one before we get into the Conference League?
Yeah. Actually, I mean, both teams Atalanta are probably the better team. Marseille had really struggled, and we're kind of lucky they kind of made it through to this round. But they've been playing a little bit better football the last probably 10 days. So they definitely are going to have a shot at home. But I think Atalanta are gonna draw at Marseille and then win at Bergamo. So I'm gonna say 1-1 draw, no 2-2 draw at Marseille.
I'll take Atalanta. I've been high on them. I think they've been a nice surprise, and they find a way into the final where they'll probably play Bayer. So maybe they get a 1-1 draw here on the road and then take care of business at home. But I do think that they advance and they get a draw 1-1 in this one. Now, you've been very high on Europa Conference League, and we want to continue that story with Villa playing Olympiacos and Fiorentina playing Club Brugge. I'm going to kind of just let you take this one because to me, Conference League is a little bit of an unnecessary evil, but go ahead.
I just think this Villa story redemption here with Emery and how they performed this year and just the complete 180 they've taken. Plus Emery being, a Europa something specialist. I think that they're gonna beat Olympiacos pretty handily here, probably 3-1, especially off a tough draw against Chelsea. I'm sure Emery wasn't probably happy about that. When it comes to Fiorentina and Club Brugge, genuinely had no idea. I mean, I'd probably lean and go chalk here with Fiorentina winning this game, but I don't know. Once it gets to the Conference League and you got the tired legs and everything, you never know. Fiorentina also just put 5 past Sassuolo, so you could say they're in goal scoring form. So I'm gonna back Fiorentina to win here, but very narrowly, probably like 1-0.
Are you covering any of these on the betting show with Harrison or any of the?
Oh yeah, no. Me and
Conference League
Harrison
games?
are gonna be cooking up here tomorrow. So we'll probably miss the Bayern Real Madrid game, but we'll definitely have some bets for Dortmund in some Conference League as well as the weekend. So definitely tune into that, and we're definitely getting hot. So don't miss out.
Well, of course, you can find all those bets on our YouTube channel where Daniel and Harrison will have that betting show out tomorrow. You can also follow us on X at Full-Time Roundup. And of course, you can listen to this podcast or any other episodes that you've missed on your platform of choice for podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star rating if you do so, and give us a subscribe. Daniel, it's been good to be back. I'm back for the rest of the season. It looks like maybe 1 or 2 off on the road for work, but it's good to be back in the chair with you, chatting some football. I know it's been a little difficult of late for you. You're kind of starting to come into the Chelsea world, so I'll be here for you to support you. But again, thanks for the listeners to coming along on the road with us, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Full-Time Roundup.